Hi everybody, so this is video number 4 of our VBA series, and in this video we are going to talk about how we can actually use a if statement and also loops in VBA. In one of the small section after we introduce the if function, we will also introduce something like debugging. That means how we want to run the code line by line. Right, so we haven't talked about this thing in previous videos. Okay, so moving on, if statement, if you are familiar with other programming language, then probably you know what this thing is. So if you are not familiar with programming language, then let me just briefly introduce. So if let's say we have this situation, right? So if Ali is in Malaysia, I will go to his house. If he is not in Malaysia, then I will not do anything, right? So assuming that I'm now in Malaysia, so if he is not in Malaysia, then I can't do anything. Okay, so we want to you see these two lines are basically one type of like code, and based on a certain condition, in this case only one condition, Ali is in or he is not in Malaysia, right? So that is our condition, and what we will do would be this part based on the condition. If it is true, then we do this thing. If it is false, then we will not do anything, right? So true, false here, it depends on how we set up this condition. So we say a statement of Ali is in Malaysia, then the output can be true or false, right? So if he is really in Malaysia, then the statement is true. If he is not in Malaysia, then this statement is false, right? So we base on this statement, and then true we do this thing, false we do this thing, right? So translating this situation into a VBA code is that it will be something like this, right? So if this is the condition, then we will go to his house. Else means if it is the statement is false, right? So over here you can actually fill up like Ali is in Malaysia, right? Malaysia. Okay, and let me change to red color, right? So this is the statement that we have earlier, and then we say, okay, if this red color is true, then we execute this code. If this red color is false, then we execute this code. So bear in mind, in programming or in a lot of things, we have only true and false, binary, right? So this if statement is like true one thing, false another thing. So you don't have the third choice. It is just like mathematics, right? So usually you wouldn't say that when we say mathematics, we are referring to like the pure and applied mathematics, excluding statistic at this moment, right? So we are saying that, okay, P is a prime number, then whether it is a prime number or he is not a prime number, we cannot say that this is at the same time a prime number and at the same time it is not a prime number. It doesn't work this way. Okay, so what if we have more than one situation, I mean one action, right? More than two action, true, false, and you have the third one. For example, something like this. So if he's in Malaysia, then I will go to his house. If he is not in Malaysia, then I will not do anything. But if I'm not sure, then I will call him to check, right? So having this one, you see, true and false itself will not be sufficient now. So we are looking at if. In previous statement, we are saying that if then and then else, right? So and if, so this 1 2 3 4, these four syntax are the compulsory one for if statement: if, then, and then else, and if. So if we add one more line here, then we are saying that, okay, we probably need to add one more if, right? So how to add this one more if would be like this: if Ali is in Malaysia, then we go to his house. Else if, so over here we can change to like Ali is in Malaysia, right? Then we go to his house. Else he is not in Malaysia, then we do nothing. Okay, so the third one, you see, we don't need else if anymore, because you know that whatever is not belonging to these two category should belong to here, right? So this is not nothing but call. So else call. So we can see that you don't have to set up all three situation. We set up two situation, and the third one or the last one we always group them under else function, else section. So we use this example, and then we basically show something like this. Okay, so let me go to this Excel file, and then alternate F11 to bring up this window again as usual. Right click, we insert one module, right? So with this module we can say, okay, I want to do a subroutine, and then this is if statement. Okay, right? So we try to present or practice this part, right? So if you have three situation, then what should we do? Okay, so easiest way is that let's say, let me just declare the variable, say status as string, right? So it's a text, and then what is this status? Status is equal to in Malaysia or in. Okay, so you can put in comment saying that, okay, in is for in Malaysia, and then not in is not in Malaysia, right? And we can as unknown as the last one. Okay, so status, let's say we set it as in first now. Okay, so for this if statement, let's say if status equal to in, right? So then what happened? What we want to do, we want to say that, okay, I output a result here, right? So say what to do. Sheet 1. So if you still can recall, we can use the ID sheet1.cls, and then row 1 column 1, right? So you can do something like this, equal to what is the status? Okay, so we go to his house, right? So we cannot use directly else here because you have three situations. So if you have only two situations, then you can do something like this, right? So 1 1, and then say this is else. Just a demonstration, right? So this is the simple one, the if then else, right? So if else statement. So F5 to run this thing, you see, let me go back to Excel. So go to his house, because we set it as in, right? So if we set it as other thing like not in, F5, you run it, then you say it is under else portion here, right? So, or we say, okay, do nothing, then you run it, F5 to run, so you get nothing, right? So F5 is here. Or you change this thing to unknown, you get the same result because, right, unknown. So you can see over here you get this unknown part, whether the status is unknown or the not in, everything is grouped under here because it's not in, right? So as long as it is not this sentence, so everything will be grouped here. So we want three situations, so we need to add else if. So this is like another if. You can do else if, and then status equal to like not in. So means if it is not in, then we check whether the status is not in or not. So if it is, then we do nothing, right? So now you have the else here. Say so just a practice or a recap in case you forgot, right? So we have different ways of defining the range and worksheets. Like for example, in this case, dot range A1 to call him, right? So you can also run this code, and you see now we get call him because the status is unknown. Okay, so this is the one simple example of if statement. So of course let me rename this one a bit, say test, right? So in case you forgot, this is the name of the worksheet and this is the ID, right? So sheet 1 and test is here. Okay, then this is the standard way of writing else if statement in VBA, or you can also do something like this, right? So let me copy. Okay, so this is like if statement 2. This is just another example. Instead of using else if, you can actually use something like this. It's like a nested if under it, right? So actually they are the same idea. Okay, this one, and then you need one more and if here, right? So with this structure, then you see we check first status equal to in or not. If yes, then do this thing. If not, then we go into everything here. Once you go into this highlighted text, we check again status equal to not in or not. If yes, then we do this line, right? So if not, then we do this line. Okay, so you have like if, a big if here, and then a smaller if here. So you can do it in this way, or you can do it in this way. Generally this one looks cleaner lah, but of course it depends on your own preference. You can do it in this way as well. Okay, so that is how we can actually use if statement. Then moving forward, now we look at this one, right? So F5 is to run the whole code like what we have been doing just now, right? So when you press F5 like this one, we haven't tried running this thing, right? So let me delete this one, go back to this code, F5 to run. So is once you press F5, it will execute everything here. Go back to the Excel, you see we get the call him also. So if you change to in and then run again, oh sorry, then we say go to his house, right? So that is how we can actually run the code. But sometimes you want to run line by line to check whether each line is working correctly or not, right? So if you want to do line by line, then we use F8, for example, over here, right? So if you see F8, this is the first line, then second, declare variable will not be run, and then this line, you can move your cursor here, you leave it there, you see status is very small, just small pop-up tooltip, right? So you see it's very small, and status is empty now. Then you press one more F8 one more time. Okay, now status is in, right? So that means this line is not executed yet. This line has been done, and we can check, okay, status is in. Then you can see it goes into the first if, and then like this. Okay, then if you change this one to unknown, let's say, then you run the code line by line, you see now it's unknown status. Move your cursor here, leave it for a while, unknown. Then you can see the yellow color line now goes into the if, the first else, right? So second else, and then this one is to execute the code. So we pass the text call him. You see it is still go to his house. So once you press this line, you go back, it's call him, but the code haven't ended yet, right? So it's still running. If you look at this reset button, then you can actually stop it if you want. So you can continue to run until here. One more time, F8, then end. Okay, so that is F8. Okay, now go to loop. Loop, you have for loop and do while loop, two types. Okay, so for loop usually is when you know how many iteration you have. So it's like for example, you have 100, you want to repeat the same thing for 100 times, then you use for loop. If you are not sure how many iteration you need to do, right, so you can use a do while loop. So we illustrate this thing using one example directly in Excel, easier. Okay, so back to this Excel here, let me delete this text. So now we are not going to use the if statement anymore. Okay, so over here, let's say if you want to enter 10 numbers here, right, so that means 1 2 3 4 5 until 10. Okay, so we want to do something like this. Of course, doing this one could be quite straightforward, I mean using Excel, right, so you can drag it, you can use formula, nothing special, but we are trying to demonstrate the same thing using VBA. So first task is we want to do this thing. Okay, right, so let me go back to this VBA, insert one more module so that we have a cleaner space, right, so sub of for loop. Okay, right, so dim I as integer. Okay, that means I want I to be just strictly integer, and I want it to do like I equal to 1 to 10, and then next I. Remember, any for loop you must always close with next variable. So this variable depends on what you define here. So I'm using I, so this one should be next I. So if we are using J, then this one should be next J. Okay, so let me just keep it back to I. Okay, so now we know that I want to do this thing 10 times. So this loop is doing what we want. And what we want to do is that row 1 put in a number 1, row 2 put in a number 2, and so on. So that means what? That means we have either you can do it something like this, worksheets, test, dot, but you cannot do range and then like A1. So this is not so easy. Of course you can use concatenate and so on, but it doesn't really how to say, it doesn't really give you a very good code, because you need more function, so your code will be slower. So we will talk about this efficiency of codes in the next video. Okay, so over here using range is not a good choice, so we need to use cells, because cell allow you to use what number of rows, right? So I as the number of rows, J would be 1 would be the column, equal to what value? I, right? So now you are saying that, you see, row I equal to I, which is like we are saying row 1 equal to a value of 1. So this is the simple for loop, and if you press F5, you get the 10 numbers inserted, right? So that is exactly what how it works here. Okay, so now we have this for loop. We try one more do while loop, right? So for do while, right, sub. Okay, so let's say now we have a range of numbers over this column A, right? So from 1 to 10, and assuming that, let's say, we don't know how many cell the user will key in, right? So now this situation is like this: the user will key in a series of numbers in column A, right, without any empty cell in middle like this. So it won't happen, things like this won't happen. Okay, so now we want to sum up everything in column A cell by cell. Of course this do while code is not the best code to do this thing. Let me to sum up everything, but just to illustrate how we can use do while loop. Okay, so we want to put in the total here, right? Okay, total equal to put in D1. Okay, so hold on, now we go to this code. So this one we have already run, and then now we say that, okay, do while, right? So do while what? You need one condition. Do while this part is a condition. Okay, so that means you need to set up a condition first. Let's say we define, we know that they are all integers, so I can define it as, like, if you are not sure, you define it as double, or you just don't declare the variable. That is also working. Define total as integer. Okay, so you can define it as integer. You can define total as, if you want decimal, then it's double. Okay, not float. Float is like when you are using C programming, then you are using float, right? So we are using double in VBA, or you just don't define anything, like leave it blank also can. Okay, but it is just my own habit that I usually define my or declare my variable before the codes as integer. Okay, right. So we use do while. What we want to do, we say, okay, we want to read this thing, right? You see, continue to read row by row until empty, then stop, right? So if it is empty, then stop. You don't want to do anything. Okay, so do while when the cell is empty, right? So we say, okay, you need one more. Okay, so dim read value as integer also, right? So do while the read val is not equal to empty, right? So equal is like this, not equal is like this. Okay, so when this is not empty, then I want to execute the code in middle. So to close loop, do while loop, we close it with something like this, a loop. Okay, so now what we want to do, we want to say that, okay, total equal to total plus worksheets test, right? So .cels, we explain why use this one just now, I comma 1, right? So one thing to take note here is that if you are doing things like this, right? So I'm not writing the correct code directly because I want to demonstrate certain thing. Okay, so first thing is that you need to define I, right? So because compared to the previous for loop, you see I from 1 to 10, then next I, that means I from 1, 2, 3, and then continue. But over here you don't have next I, so that means your I, if you don't declare everything, I is empty or a value of 0, so it doesn't work this way. So you need like okay, so I as integer. So you can choose not to declare the variable. So I just demonstrate I equal to, the first thing is that you want to start it from 0 or 1, so it depends. So if you start it from 0 first, let's say, right, so that means I declare I to be integer. I mean, I never declare, I commented, so I set a value of I equal to 0, then I need I to be equal to I plus 1, so that every time I loop this thing, I will continue to go to the next cell without this one, right? So if let's say you put it like this, and then without this one, your code will be running forever. Okay, because you see I equal to 1, then Excel will always VBA will always read cell 1 1 and continue, so it won't stop. So you need to have I equal to I plus 1, so that Excel will go to the next row and next row to check. But over here we start from 0 first. Okay, now so you imagine when read value is not empty, then Excel will go inside and then just do something like this. But one more problem here is that what is read value? We know that we need to specify read value to be these cells, right? So when we should read this thing. Okay, so probably I can like say, okay, now I have the value of I, that means the row number. So I say that, okay, read value is equal to what? Worksheet like test.cls I1, right? So this line here works perfectly, that reading row 1 column 1 into here, and if it is not empty, then we continue, right? So this part we can actually change it to read value, right? So everything looks fine, and then we can say, okay, worksheet test oops, dot range. So now we can use range because the targeted cell will not be changing. It is always D1, right? So D1 equal to total. Okay, so one thing to be more conservative is that you can also define total to be 0, but over here actually you don't really need to do that because total is not declared as global variable, so it's not so important, this line. But if let's say you are defining some global variable, then you may need to have this kind of things here. Okay, so I leave this one here first, and okay, this one you can remove. Then we run the code and we see type mismatch, right? So you get an error here, you see. Let me run the code, type mismatch, and then you can either end or debug it. So part of this video is also trying to learn how to do debugging, right? So this is the reason of the error, type mismatch. You can end it means no more. Okay, then you run one more time. Debug means once you click this one, you get which line is having problem. That means VBA read until here, and during this line the errors pop up. Okay, so why this thing is like mismatch? Because we define read value as integer, right? So if you don't send a value into read value, this variable, it is a 0, and you are saying that okay, 0 how to say, it's not equal to empty, right? So this one becomes type mismatch. You are comparing a value to a text. So anything in this symbol, right? For example, you type in something like this, right? So thing, this is a text, right? So, or a string. So we cannot do it in this way. Then what to do? We can actually change a little bit. We say okay, now type mismatch, right? So I change this thing to string. We see what happened. Anytime you change the variable declaration, this thing will be reset. Just okay, right? So we run one more time. You see, it seems like okay. You see, no more error. But if you go to the Excel, it is a 0. Why? Right? So now it becomes something we need to investigate. So that is why we need the F8, right? So you can run line by line to see, okay, I is equal to 0, no issue. Read this one. You see, it won't go into the loop, right? So it directly go to here, and then total is 0 because we haven't assigned any value to total. So total we declare as integer, by default it is 0, and then you keep F8, then no more, right? So you see, now we realize that the code never execute whatever inside. So why is it so? So we can run F8 line by line one more time, right? Or if you know that okay, I want to investigate this line, you can move your cursor to the gray color bar, small bar here, click here, so that you have this red color dot and everything is in red. Then you can directly press F5. Excel will run from beginning until this line stop. It won't execute this line yet, right? So you check, read value is empty, this is empty, right? Because we define it as a string, this string is empty. So this code will only be executed when read value is non-empty. But now read value is empty, directly end the loop. So that is also why we have this issue. Okay, so we know that now to avoid this issue, the read value we have to assign with something first, right? So you can randomly assign it to be something. It's like initialize this thing, right? Let me put a comment, initialize read VAL. So once you have initialized this value, right? So you have read value to be equal to 1, then the codes will come in. And one thing that you want to investigate is this thing, right? So because you are declaring this total as integer, read value as string. So this is something you want to be slightly more careful, because not all programming language will allow you to do a summation of an integer or any numbers with a string, because you have already defined read value as string. That means it is a text. So it's like you're trying to say 1 plus tomorrow is equal to what? It doesn't work this way, right? So for most programming language, for VBA, let's say if we are not sure, then we run the code, put a stop here, run the code. We see total is still 0 because this line haven't been executed yet. Read value is 1. You see the tooltip here, the 0, you don't have the symbol, right? So the read value 1, you see it indicates that this is a string. But if you run this code, you can see VBA runs perfectly, no issue in this case. Total become a 1. Okay, so you need to be slightly careful here is that if you define it to be a string, then when user key in, like instead of 1 2 3 key in ABC, then you will have issue here. Okay, so one of the good ways is that you try not to do integer plus string. Keep this practice. This is something like although it is working, but it is not a good practice, so we try not to do that. Okay, so instead of doing that, we can actually direct get the value here, something like that. Okay, so that you are sure that you are taking a number plus a number, although we know that in VBA it works in this way, but try not to do that. Okay, so this is like a, now this read value become like a checker, so check whether the cell is empty or not. If empty, then break the loop, right? So now if let's say I put in a stop here, I run F5, you see 0. If you run F5 one more time, what happened? It will go to here and then loop and then come to here, stop again. That means it will become 1 2 3, right? Sorry, 6 and then plus 10, right? So and so on. So you can continue to run one by one if you want. So now okay, so I is 10 now, right? So you see I is 11. When you read this one, read value is empty because the VBA is reading this one now. Okay, so of course in this case Excel still add one more time. This is one time extra, right? So and then read value is empty, stop, right? So pass this value here and then ends up, so you have 55. Sum up 10 numbers, you get 55. Okay, so you can actually remove this one, run this code, so you get 55 here. So this is straightforward, and this is how we do a do val. That means do val you need a checker. Usually this is like you are running through all the cell that is non-empty. For example, you can do something like this. Okay, so so this do while loop probably is like a little bit harder to write. It depends. So when you are familiar with it, then you will find the advantage of do while loop. Of course, for loop is like quite straightforward, right? So if let's say the same thing, if you want to achieve sum up 10 numbers, put it here using for loop, then you can do it quite fast, right? So this is like for loop 2. Okay, so you see we can actually for I equal to 1 to 10. If let's say you know how many iterations you definitely need, right? So in this case 10, then you can say that okay, now total equal to total plus worksheets test. Of course the codes, the line here are like lesser because I skip all the variable declaration. This is just for illustration. Okay, like this. So you run this code, you get exactly the same result as the do while loop, this part. Okay, so that is like for example, let me delete this one, run this code, you see I get 55 also. So for loop, when you know when should you end, then it should be faster and easier. But if you are not sure how many iterations you have, then you will need to have a do while loop, right? So for example, if I add 11 here, right? So deleting this one, running this code, still 55 because you are still summing up 10 numbers. Okay, but over here, when you run this one, you get 66 because you have 11 number. So that is how we can actually have this one do while loop. Of course, for loop here, you can also change the upper limit based on how many numbers you have over here. So you can also make a variation, right? So let me quickly demonstrate this one, right? So for loop 3. So what's that? DIM MAX M as integer. Okay, so M equal to, I want to count how many cells I have here, right? So we can actually use worksheet function, but over here is like M equal to application dot, you see after you dot you have the subset and then worksheet function. So we can call all the function like count A is non-blank, right? So if you remember, and then worksheets test dot range. So we are trying to count whole range, right? So if you are not sure whether this line works or not, then you can put a stop here, right? Run the code and then press F8 again. Move your cursor here, you see you get 11. Okay, so stop the code, change this one to M. Okay, let me delete this one. Right, so running this code, you get 66 also. Now adding 12, 13, running this code again, right? The numbers get updated. So you see, there are different ways of writing the codes, and it depends on your preference and also which one you think is most efficient. And in the next video, we are going to talk about a little bit on how we can improve the code's efficiency. Okay, so we stop here, and thanks for watching. I see you in the next video. Okay, bye bye.